The 5 remembrances. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are the nature of change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. I am of nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are the nature of change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. I am the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. I am the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are the nature of change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. My deeds are my closest companions. I am the beneficiary of my deeds. My deeds are the ground on which I stand. This is precious human life, rarely encountered, is easily lost. Now that I have life and opportunity, may I practice the Dharma wholeheartedly. Mahayana refuge. In my heart, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May I liberate the suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way. In my heart, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May I liberate the suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way. In my heart, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May I liberate suffering beings and bring them to great joy. May the compassionate spirit of love grow within me, that I may actualize the great way. Invocation of the lineage. I give thanks for the guidance of my teachers. For the lineage of teachers before them, I give thanks and offerings for the good practices of generosity, moral discipline, patience, joyful effort, concentration, wisdom, skillful means, unshakable vow, spiritual powers, and awakened awareness for my benefit. May their years of life be lengthened, may their vows be completely realized, and may I cultivate these perfections with their guidance. 7 practices of the Bodhisattva. I bow down in body, speech, and mind. I offer the best I have to give, both real and imagined, to fill the space between us. I regret and purify all transgressions. I rejoice in all virtues. I request you to remain until total enlightenment. I request wise and compassionate guidance. I dedicate my merit for the sake of all beings. Generating love and compassion. May all sentient beings be free from clinging and hatred. Being close to some and distant from others, how wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will free them from clinging and hatred. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the cause of happiness. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will bring them happiness and the causes of happiness. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will free them from suffering and the causes of suffering. Bless me to accomplish this. May all sentient beings have the joy that has never known suffering. May they be free from clinging, hatred, jealousy, miserliness, doubt, pride, wrongdoing, ignorance, and dualistic thoughts. How wonderful it would be. May this be accomplished. I will bring them to this state. Bless me to accomplish this. Please stand and turn to page 4 in your liturgy book for the Heart Sutra. Great Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra. Practicing the Prajna Paramita clearly saw that all 5 skandhas are empty, transforming all suffering and distress. Shariputra form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form, form is exactly emptiness, emptiness exactly form, sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are essentially empty, not born, not destroyed, not seen, not pure, without loss, without gain. Therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, perception, mental reaction, consciousness, no higher, no somebody, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, object of thought, no seeing, and so on, to no thinking, no ignorance, and also no ending of ignorance, and so on, to no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death, no suffering, cause of suffering, cessation, hath no wisdom, and no attainment, since there is nothing to attain. The Bodhisattva lives like Prajna Paramita, with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance in therefore no fear, far beyond elusive thinking. Right here is nirvana, all Buddhas of past, present, and future live by Prajna Paramita, attaining Anutara Samya Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajna Paramita is the great sacred mantra, the great vivid mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not mere formality. Therefore, set forth the Prajna Paramita mantra. Set forth this mantra and proclaim Gate, Gate, Mara, Gate, Marsam, Gate, Bodhi, Swaha, Gate, Gate, Mara, Gate, Marsam, Gate, Bodhi, Swaha, Gate, Gate, Mara, Gate, Marsam, Gate, Bodhi, Swaha. Infinite realms of light and dark convey the Buddha mind. All that is and we ourselves come forth in perfect harmony. We offer this sincere and Buddha practice for the many beings of the sixth world and dedicate it in grateful thanks to the strength and sound practice of the great Pratna Sangha and its teachers. May our virtuous actions be clear from all interferences, and may our vows be fully realized. We especially dedicate these merits to Jimmy, Marge, Lori, Carly's mom, the Stone family, Becky, Soke, Gardner family, Dave, Christy, Sarah, Jack, Gordy, Hazel, Sister Suzette, Roger, and Noam. May they have comfort and healing. And to Emily at the time of her death, as well as those names we hold in the silence of our hearts, and those names we now voice aloud. May we live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma, and may we realize the Buddha way together. Space and time, wisdom beyond wisdom, It's time all Dharma school teachers and children proceed to the ancestor hall for class. Everyone else, please prepare for yourself.
idea that I learned.
You will now recite the Sangha Covenant, found on page 8 of your literature. We, the Daishin Koki's Sangha, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder and wisdom and compassion, we seek to cultivate by practice and with deep gratitude for the teachers of this lineage and our connections to one another. Covenant to support each other by holding the precepts of doing no harm, practicing good, and actualizing good for others. Please be seated. All sit comfortably, facing the teacher. You can make eye contact, and in a moment we'll recite the Gatha of the Sutra, also on page 8. Kata on opening the sutra. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. A couple of comments before we get into the discussion of the Lankavatara Sutra. Thanksgiving is a thing, holidays are a thing. And I have to say, it's a conscious decision of the temple to not align ourselves necessarily with the hallmark kind of traditional holidays. Many people here observe them in ways that make sense for their families and their life situations. Everyone's encouraged to do what makes sense to them. And yet there's some relief that I hear about often from people to have a space to come that is not captured by the same implications, let us say. I think it's important to make harmony with one's family and one's society in a way that makes sense. And also it's important to have a different space that you can enter that is timeless, that is not subject to the same push and pull. We have our own push and pull. We have Rahatsu and we have Bodhi Day. We have all kinds of fun things. That being said, it's clearly the case that for many folks, the holidays that we're in the midst of are a very challenging time. And so I would ask all of us to be very careful about how we wield our minds and our hearts and our bodies during these times, and particularly how we let or don't let other folks try to manipulate or wield our minds. Let them do what they do, and yet know what you are doing, and be able to hold your center and with kindness and eyes of love and compassion, keep your hands on the wheel. Okay, it's a very important time. There's a funny, to me, cartoon that goes around about like clockwork around this time of year, and perhaps you've seen this. It's got a young monastic in the little cartoon that's training in the path of enlightenment, and then the elder, wizened Yoda-like figure says, "Well, you have one final trial. Go back to the holiday dinner." And then you see this disciple like this with the strange uncle and the screaming kids and the food they don't like, and on and on. So it's all good practice. So take it as such. Also, another kind of unintended consequence, perhaps, of the holiday is that there are many of our Sangha who are traveling or have family over and stuff, and have sent me notes. My inbox is filled with recognitions of the fact of how grateful folks are that we have the streaming
capacities that we do, that we're able to make a virtual mode of participating in the Sangha accessible, not just to folks who live across state lines, and we have many Sangha members who do, but also the locals who maybe now they're across state lines or have family over, and yet we can all stay in touch and keep connected to the rhythm and the flow of training. So a blessing for all of us. Lastly, although we don't hinge ourselves on the Gregorian holidays, the temple definitely acknowledges the changing of the seasons. And isn't it wondrous to look out right in this very moment and see the beautiful expression of the Dharma that's happening all around us? Every single snowflake lands in exactly the right place. No one completely the same as any other. All expressions of impermanence, causes and conditions that give rise to the snow occur. They have their expression. Snow snows. And then these causes and conditions cease. They play themselves out. And soon enough, the spring buds will begin to respond in this cycle of continual unfolding. The trained mind must learn to appreciate the beauty of these things as expressing that which cannot be grasped. If you try to go out and bottle a bunch of snowflakes because you like them so much, you want to keep them forever, it will serve you no better than if you were to try to bottle the spring breeze because you prefer that. Simply allow yourself to contact and connect with what is actually occurring without clinging or grasping. Allow the snow to snow. Allow the spring buds to spring. Allow the flourishing of summer its time, which inevitably expresses the changing and letting go of fall. And let this cycle at each moment be an expression of reality. And you, dear one, harmonize with it. It's a beautiful practice, isn't it? I wish more of us knew how to thoroughly contact and enjoy things without trying to freeze or control or manipulate them. Think of how much suffering would simply go away if we could all learn to just not try to cling and control each other or ourselves or the weather. Now, to the sutra. Many will know that I have been working through the Lankavatara Sutra and continue to do so. And we're in a chapter towards the latter chunk here on discipleship. And this is the second half of that chunk. And the querent here is asking about the different kinds of disciples. Mahamati asks the Buddha, tell us, Holy One, what are the different kinds of disciples? How are they known? What are they? And in the first, he expressed it in terms of stream entrant and once returner and never returner. And then this time he says, and they can also be looked at in terms of their attainment and their understanding. So the first kind of takeaway from this is to say that there is a path. The sutra is very clear about this. There is actually a path and there are stages of development. And these stages of development are as real as a baby moving into being a toddler, being into up into a kid, and then a teenager, and a young adult, and then a mature adult, and then an elder. These are all recognizably different stages of development, right? And somehow in spiritual training, we tend to think that there's no such thing. I either believe or I don't believe. And if you believe correctly, you win eternal reward. If you believe wrongly, you suffer eternal pain, something like this. Buddhism says, well, I'll use polite language. No, thank you. Buddhism says something very different. The Buddha taught something very different. The Buddha taught very clearly, you must attain the understanding of true reality. It's right there It's right here around us all the time. And yet, if you don't realize it for yourself, it doesn't help you. Frankly, it will not help you to believe that enlightenment is a possibility in the world or that others have done it. Maybe it's useful in as much as it inspires you to take up your own journey in earnestness, but its use ends there. Now, instead of believing it's worth hiking the mountain, you must actually start the travel. And so there are guides and there are levels. Ironically, what you realize is that it's all been perfect the whole time. And you see it everywhere. But please don't try to skip steps. Earn that insight in the cells of your body, in the marrow of your bones. Do not be satisfied simply with intellectual understanding of it. And that's what the sutra begins to point us to. Disciples, the Buddha said, may be grouped according to their spiritual progress, which they have attained. They may be classed into four, namely disciples, masters, arhats, and bodhisattvas. The first class of disciples, I love this line, this is very encouraging. These disciples mean well, but they find it difficult to understand unfamiliar ideas. Good meaning, folks, but they're a little troubled. I think that applies to pretty much all of us here. But he says that their minds are quite joyful when studying about and practicing Dharma things belonging to appearances that can be discriminated. But they become confused by the notion of an uninterrupted chain of causation. And they become fearful when they consider the aggregates that make up personality and its object world as being Maya-like emptiness and egoless. Now, what does it mean, joyful when studying and practicing things belonging to appearance? There may be some in this category who find that when they encounter listening to a talk, perhaps, or reading a sutra, the ideas and teachings of the Dharma, which still are in the world of this and that, and there are many, provide consolation and comfort, and they make sense, and it's useful. If you glance over the stuff we read and recite together and invoke in the daily liturgy, these kinds of teachings will produce a kind of a joy or a resonance anyway. Right? It's not everyone doesn't have to become giddy on command or anything, but there's a resonance there with the teachings, like, let's say, the 5 hindrances. You resonate with death. Good for you. With old age, with illness, with change, with your behaviors and actions being the ground on which you stand. These kinds of teachings beckon and call and encourage. And also practicing things belonging to appearance. You might wonder, well, what the heck would that be? The sound of the temple bell, the smell of the temple incense, the feeling of walking into the temple and feeling the vibe of the zendo, the care with which things are curated, the joy of good spiritual friendship and companionship along the road. These are beautiful, wholesome, and wondrous things, and they encourage, and they provide nutrition. And they're limited. There's only so much that the beauty of the liturgy say, or the wondrousness of the encountering nature can help with. So their minds are joyful when they study about things and practice things belonging to appearance and belonging to discrimination, judgment. But they become confused by the notion of an uninterrupted chain of causation. The uninterrupted chain of causation we pointed to with the snow. The weather, the political moment, peace, war, family, solitude, this constant cause experiencing, falling away, the next cause, on and on. There can be, in a way, that the study of this can produce a sudden bout of insecurity to the ego, to the self that still wishes to make a nest and make a fort and stake a claim. They become fearful when they consider the aggregates that make up the personality and its object world as being empty and egoless. That is to say, empty of a permanent fixed self. And we'll see this throughout the sutra, and we've seen it throughout the sutra. This so-called twofold egolessness is the key, one of them. And the first egolessness is the egolessness of things. And egolessness doesn't mean in the Freudian sense necessarily. Like any one of those snowflakes there, it's probably fairly apparent to most of us that there's no permanent self-generated snowflake that just is eternal and stays. Like you can see that. They come and they go. No sooner these lovely expressions of reality hit the ground than do they begin to change into something else. Mm-hmm. And that's well and good when it's a snowflake. How about it when it's your sweet new guitar? Well, that's going to stay forever. Let me give you a clue. No, it won't. Even the Stradivarius violins, if you don't play them and take care of them, they'll just crumble into nothing. And eventually they will anyway. It gets closer to the bone the more you study it. Like my own body, for example. Where are my healthy 19-year-old joints? They are gone. There's something else here. What's happening? I didn't sign on for this. Nevertheless. But it gets even closer to the bone than that. The aspects of the personality itself. After all, I am here seeing those snowflakes, and I can see that they are impermanent. Oh, well, that's just the thumb joint with being a little arthritis. That's over there somewhere. It gets closer, much closer, way closer. They become fearful when they consider the aggregates that make up personality, the self, if you will. You see, the sutra and the teachings of the Buddha go very, very clearly. The way to freedom is not to run around out there and try to gather all the nice things and keep them safe and close to you. People or ideas. And I like folks and I like ideas and I have some nice stuff. Nonetheless, don't be confused. But far closer to the bone is the self, the sense you have of yourself as a permanent fixed self. The driver inside the machine here. When you really investigate that very carefully, not just by thinking about it, by watching, then you begin to see that the snowflake and yourself are not so different. You're all snowflakes. We're all snowflakes. And perfect exactly as we are. And yet, to a disciple at this level of training, that's still a little scary. And who it's scary to is the ego, the self-sense, the sense of yourself as a self. It's one of the turnings that must occur somewhere in a person's training, where they go from paying attention to an object and letting the mind settle and pay attention and land, so that your mind is focused clearly on, let's say, the breath. Okay, You could just as well look out the window and just enjoy the snow, or you could pay attention to a candle flame, or listening deeply. There are many, many practices. You can walk and pay attention to your body. But this kind of concentration practice that has a self and an object of awareness, this is useful to calm the mind and to calm the body. And the mind must be calmed and the body must be stilled. If you are only ever in hyperreactivity mode and you're constantly on high alert trying to do all the things and respond to all the prompts and to be in touch with everything that's happening in the entire world, thank you, phone, you will have no peace. And it's very clear, the Buddha said, all the lineage teachers have amplified the fact that if you don't know how to unplug, modern language, then you will never be able to see into the source code. You're just running the game all the time. And you're trapped in getting points and winning and losing, leveling up, getting crushed. Turn the thing off and notice what's going on. And then you can play if you want, but it's a different game. And no more are you fooled, but rather you are awake, you are aware. It is as though you woke up inside a dream and noticed that other characters in there are really scared and suffering, and you show up as a great benevolent helper to them, knowing the entire time it's a dream. So this peering deeply into the aggregates of the self, seeing truly into that which clings. And one of this turning I was saying is that if you realize that the sense of yourself as a witness is just another experience that's rising in mind, that's a little intense. There's a shift there that goes from I'm watching it to realizing and experiencing the sense of self is actually rising in the field of mind just like anything else. Very different. They're able to advance, the sutra goes on to the fifth or sixth stage, and they're able to do away with the expression of the deep, unwholesome passions, but they are not able to be rid of the notions that give rise to them. And therefore, they are unable to get rid of the clinging of an ego self sense of permanent existence, which accompanies these attachments, habits, and habit energy. Interestingly, the sutra goes here in kind of it might seem octagonal direction, but it makes sense really when you reflect on it. In this same class, in this same level, may well be disciples and earnest practitioners of other traditions and faiths. Those who have some insight and yet cling to notion of an eternal self, or a supreme Atman, or a personal deity. And they seek a kind of nirvana that is in harmony with those ideas. You know, it's much earlier in my life, I was quite interested in the dialogue between not necessarily different religious traditions, so much as different contemplative practitioners. The deep contemplative practitioners of humanity, they all have some things very much in common, regardless of their expression or the story or the theology around them. That was very interesting to me. It still is. And yet, for as much commonality as there is, there's still some pretty serious difference as well. And I don't really believe that it's the case that there's only one right way to do things. I think there are multiple correct answers, just like there's multiple wrong answers, probably a lot more of those. And yet the peak of awakening that the Buddha points to has this very particular quality to it. that requires us to let go of this, well, twofold egolessness, or the twofold ego, I suppose. That's what's let go of. You must realize the impermanence of things, the non-selfness of things. You must realize the way in which things are and live in harmony with that. And you must also realize the way in which you are. Self is, like really, and live in harmony with that. The cause of suffering is to misperceive reality and live in a way that is antagonistic towards it. Again, if I use the teaching of the snow, I mean, if you fantasized that you wanted to capture one and hold it and own it like a pet and keep it forever, can't be done. But if you really thought that was true and the way it was supposed to be, you could spend an entire lifetime disgusted that it doesn't work. And there's nothing wrong with the snow. The snow is snowing along just fine, with or without you. How do we find that kind of peace? How do we find that kind of harmony? Second, the sutra goes on to say that there are others who are not necessarily earnest disciples of different paths and traditions, but those who are materialistic. They can achieve a certain level of freedom, and yet they still feel that supreme enlightenment is still bound by this cause and effect thing, which it is not. Gravity is not bound by your ideas of it. None of these good folks, earnest though they may be, have gained insight into the truth of the twofold egolessness and are therefore of limited spiritual insight. For them, there is no true freedom. Nonetheless, they have a great self-confidence, which is actually the problem. Great confidence in the self. It's kind of, I think, an unfortunate quality that we can see brimming over the sides like a pot of water left too long on the stove. We see leadership today that seems to have as its main currency entertainment value and just ridiculous hubris and over self-confidence. And somehow that gets the applause. I wish it did not. Be careful of the self-confidence. A teacher once told me, you should have no confidence, but you should have no lack of confidence either. There's something in there to be found. You know, luckily I've had the chance to interact with many deep practitioners over the decades. I've been in the presence of some realized masters. And one thing I've noticed is that they're real people. I mean, they have a lot of personality and they're very there. How is it possible? It's very easy to get funny ideas about what a Zen person ought to be or is, what a Buddha ought to be or is. It's one of the reasons why it's so important to have good, noble, spiritual friends that you can interact with that practice. And to have folks that have been on the path longer than you have to be able to help guide and give confidence to your training. The answer for these folks is to gain a patient acceptance of the egolessness of things and the egolessness of the self. And I think we should all take that as an encouragement to ourselves, regardless of where you may or may not be in the path. Really enjoy the teaching of the weather. Allow the snow and the calming winter be a great friend and a guide, even if you dislike the winter or if you love it. Let it express, let it be a reminder to you. When you walk outside the temple door after the meal today and you feel the cold air hit your skin, I hope you remember the Dharma is caressing you directly, intimately, saying, here, child, feel this, wake up, notice, feel your feet in contact with the earth and note the cooling of the air. For know this, it will change. Early winter has a very different quality from the deep winter. You know this. I feel very lucky to live in a place where the seasons happen. I think if it was sunny and 72 every single day, I would not be so good for me. I could make it work, but I prefer this Dharma caress of the seasons and of the change. So whatever else this holiday season brings to you, let it bring the teaching of impermanence and the joy and freedom of it to you. Allow the winter's caress to comfort and console and encourage, not just to frighten. And as it moves from early winter into the deep winter, allow yourself to feel what that brings. And don't hold on to it. As delicious, perhaps, or as intimidating, perhaps, as it may be, it will change. In the very deep of the cold, the buds of spring are beginning. You can feel their pull also. And then allow this to move more and more into yourself. Very simply, note and know that you are not some permanent fixed thing. This is actually really cool. That means that every moment you have the chance to say, who am I now? What's going to happen now? How shall we live our lives this time, this day? Let's see what arises. There's possibility. That which chains you, that which binds you, is also impermanent, just like these snowflakes. Whatever it is, there are guaranteed it's impermanent. There will be ways, there are ways to find out how to release it, let it go, and how to embrace what's actually arising in this moment. And then finally, allow this winter season as it presents to us now. Nature itself pulls in. The trees retract. The creatures grow still. Allow yourself to feel that inward pull and look very closely at yourself. Pay deep and exquisite attention to your mind, and to your body, and to your feeling. And fearlessly, directly contact it, not mediated through some command from someone else or some theological truth you have to align with. Allow yourself rather to simply note what's actually arising. See it, acknowledge it, let it go, and then dedicate the merits. For the sake of all beings throughout space and time, may it be so.
And thank you all for choosing to be here today. That ends our streaming portion of the service. Are there any announcements?